Hello, I want to thank you for coming back to my channel. This one is Fruit of Passion number 7. And in Fruit of Passion number 7, I'm going to be talking about King Solomon of the Bible. King Solomon was supposedly the son of King David. And when King David was getting older and not able to take care of the work that the king needed to do for the country of Israel, that King Solomon took over. And one of the major uh, projects that King Solomon had in front of him that was given by his father David was to build the temple for God. Up until then, they had the Ark of the Covenant was in a tent, and the Ark of the Covenant would be carried around and put in the different location that the Israelites were in during the 40 years they wandered in the wilderness. And since they took over the land of Israel, the Ark of the Covenant was at different locations. Part of the time it was even captured by the Philistines. But when the Philistines got a plague as a result of having the Ark of the Covenant, they returned the Ark of the Covenant to Israel. And Israel placed it in one of the citizens' home until David prepared a place in Jerusalem for the temple to be built. Now, David captured Jerusalem way after the Ark of the Covenant was created and served as the religious center for the people of Israel. Now, the people of Israel have located into the promised land that God had offered to give them, and they have now taken over that land, and they have been there now for several years. They've gone through all of the prophets. They've asked God for a king, and God gave them King Saul. Now, King Saul was the king for a while. He did have a little problem with David, and David basically hid out with the Philistines for a couple of years until, unfortunately, King Saul ended up being wounded, and it had cost him his life in a battle with the Philistines. But that now is all behind us. King David has now been the king of Israel for several years, and now he is getting older. He's had some hard luck along the way where some of his children have been killed, and he has been very unhappy about that. But right now, he is chosen to make King Solomon the successor king to follow him and to rule over Israel. And the job he gave him was to build a permanent dwelling for God and put the Ark of the Covenant in the Holy of Holies and build the temple as it was given and instructed to them to do. So King Solomon took control of the country of Israel and built the temple and was a king and was known as a very wise man. Now, as I'd said before, I know that King Solomon wrote the book of Job or dictated it, and maybe one of his scribes did the actual writing, but he is responsible for the book of Job. He has made contributions in Psalms. He's responsible for Proverbs and Song of Solomon. So there are 5 books of the Old Testament that King Solomon has contributed to. And that ends up to being as many books as Moses is contributed to. So King Saul was a very important person when it comes to the writing of the Old Testament as far as Christians are concerned. And as I said before, I am a Christian and I respect King Solomon, And in my younger years as a Christian, I coveted having the life of King Solomon. Now, the reason I did that is King Solomon had 700 wives and 300 concubines. That gave him 1,000 women. Any night of the week, he could go into the room and pick one or any number up to 1,000 of these women to spend the night with him. I considered any male that had that available to him was as good as God could give anyone. And he would be basically blessed beyond understanding. Now, I did think that when I was a young boy and felt that way all the way up through the time I got married. Once I got married, I was very, very thankful to God that He gave me the wife He did, because I did get to have sex with her. And I look back on my life as that is what I would call the single greatest blessing I've ever had. The first, of course, is being a Christian. But short of that, I do respect and to this day like women. And I think that women are God's greatest gift to man that He's ever given us. But now that I've given my idea, I'm going to go ahead and talk a little bit about King Solomon. Now, King Solomon had this experience. He did some things unusual that I did not understand. Reading the scriptures, I understood that he built some ships on the Red Sea, and I thought that was not very wise. Now, he's supposedly being one of the wisest men that ever lived up till that time, and building ships on the Red Sea would not let him know where they were going, because the Phoenicians knew just about everything about the Mediterranean. And why he would build them on the Red Sea, where he would have no idea where they would end up. And as far as he was concerned, they might even fall off the edge of the earth. But that's what he did. And looking at the result he got, God did bless him, because one of the benefits that he did get was the ships ended up in India, and he came back with gold from India, from a place that he referred to as Ophir. And Ophir was King Solomon's gold mine that he got many other items from the area. And the reason we know it was India is the description of the items he got, the wood and types, things like that, only come from India. So that's why we know that that's where Ophir was as well. So King Solomon got a lot of gold over the years, and that helped King Solomon finance his empire. And that's why during the time of King Solomon, Israel had a pretty good existence. Now, during that time period in Israel, by reading the scriptures, the people weren't totally satisfied. Now, this doesn't blame Solomon, because Solomon was the king. He was given the job at a very young age, and he did the best he could. In my opinion, the best country that any human being can be a part of is a free society. Now, in a free society, no one has any advantages over any other member of the society, and that includes all Homo sapiens, men and women included. Now, unfortunately, as I said before, we have what I live in is called the murder and mayhem years. And the murder and mayhem years started at 1550 BC, when the volcano erupted on Thera, and over 99% of the Philistines were incinerated in a 24-hour period, then we have a whole turning of what happened prior to that and after that. Now, for the next 200 to 300 years, within 300 years, the change had already totally occurred. But in about 275 years, we have the proof that the transition was still going on. And what this transition was a change from the number one country on the planet Earth at that time were the Philistines, which were the same people that Plato called the Atlantans, and were going by what Plato said. They had a utopian society. And I have concluded the result of that utopian society was that they were a group of Amazon women that had met up with the men, and they became known as the Philistine or the Pelasets or whatever else you want to call them. They all have historical names. Now, it is true, a bunch of, I will say, I don't want to be derogatory about the comment, but it is like someone saying that Walt Disney tells his true stories. And that is a joke for anyone that knows the name Walt Disney, because Walt Disney is the builder and the owner of Disneyland, and Disneylands now have been built throughout pretty much of the known world. And the Disneyland is for entertainment only. And we all know about Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck, and that is as accurate as calling someone else the same kind of name. And the one I'm referring to, as I've had before, is Minoan. Minoan was invented by Arthur Evans in the 1900s, and it was a mistake. He didn't know what he was talking about. He fantasized about something that didn't exist, and he made up a name, and everyone repeats it. Now, they're having a lot of trouble finding the Philistines because they want to try to mix the Minoans and segregate them from the Pelasets or the Philistines or the people that built Tepe. If you look at logic, you will find out the people that built Tepe knew how to cut stone, and they were pretty intelligent people about building. All you have to do is look at the palace at Knossos, and you will see that no other group of people on the face of the planet could have done that kind of job without being connected in one way or another with each other. Both places are just as advanced. And by that I mean Knossos had hot and cold running water in the building and indoor toilets. And I've said before, my in-laws that are from Russia live out in Chernyanka, and even till this day, they have an outhouse. Now, that was 3,500 years ago. People had what my in-laws don't have today in Russia. Now, being a contractor, I know that is a big difference. And that's why I recognize the Philistines for what they did. And I recognize their society for what they accomplished. What they accomplished were having the women equal in their society. And that society was then able to create the first creation that I know that Homo sapiens have recorded and have credit for, and that creation is bronze. And they created the bronze by mixing the copper and the tin, and then molding it and circulating it throughout the known world at the time. Now, the reason I know that it was the Philistines is all you have to do is to look at the logic of what the archaeologists have already shown us. And they have found a ship that was sunk that had copper ingots from Cyprus. It had tin on it, and it was headed for Crete. Now, this was after the volcano erupted. So that means the people on Crete, before the Dorians moved in and brought an armed invasion against them and drove them off of Crete, where they had to then go to Avaris in the Nile Delta, until the Egyptians then placed them in the 5 cities up next to where Israel is going to move into after they finish wandering in the wilderness. Now, with the history as it is, and people not being able to find out about the Exodus from Egypt and the story that Moses told, it's pretty logical what happened. Moses grew up as an Egyptian. Moses knew all of the things that an Egyptian student and scholar would have known. So when Moses was given the job by God to take the herdsmen and make a nation out of them, he did what God told him to do. And when he chose people around Avaris that were from different places, some of them from islands around Greece, it wasn't called Greece at the time, they were all separate city-states. But they had some Danoids there that probably is what ended up as being the tribe of Dan in Judah. And that would count because he was told to make a nation out of the herdsmen that were there. That was to distinguish the herdsmen from the farmers who thought they were superior. Now, the reason this is important is you have to remember that in 1550 BCE, when the Philistines were wiped off the face of the earth, the idea of every human being in the society being absolutely equal with every other human being died. From that day on, it became a situation where, as I said before, the horsepower engine of the male Homo sapien is, if it doesn't agree with you, kill it. We started killing each other. And we have done that for the last 3,550 years. Now, with what has happened recently in Israel, we have to know it's time to go back to what we had. Let's put an end to it. Let's all end the murder and mayhem years. That means that one Homo sapien cannot kill another Homo sapien, period. Now, as I've said in my other videos, we have to expand that because we're going into space. And we have to know that someone made us different. I don't know if God did it or if another intelligent life form came to Earth and did the gene splicing and made us Homo sapiens. Why do I say Homo sapiens are different? Because we are creators. No other animal in the history of the planet besides Homo sapiens are creators. None of them are like us. We did not come from any of them. We are either created by God or another intelligent life form. But irrespective of that, I hate to be the bad news for all of those people that believe in evolution. That is just as silly as believing the story of Disney being real. It's a made-up story. You can repeat it as long as you want. It's still a lie. It's miseducation. It's passing on stupidity to the next generation so they will not learn as well. I've learned from my experience in history, when you learn something that's wrong, it's much harder to change that and learn something that's right than it is to not to know in the first place and have it exposed to you. And why do I say that? Because I'm the one doing these videos, and there are 3.5 billion people on the face of the planet, and none of them that I know of have put together the things that I know that I know. Now, I have said I have a system for solving the problem in Israel, and I'm sorry that it didn't get solved before they've recently done the things that they've done, which is to come in and kill a couple of thousand innocent people. That is a sin, terrible, and those people aren't going to ever see heaven. They're going to hell. And the reason I know that is Jesus Christ told us that. He said, you don't do anything to another Homo sapien that you didn't want them to do to you. So from the teachings of Jesus Christ, who the Muslims say that they believe that Jesus was a prophet, well, here's a prophet that told you, if you kill someone, what you're saying is, I want someone to come and kill me. Now, I know that that would be a stupid comment, because all you are is a horsepower engine run amok. You're not following Muhammad. You're not following Christ. You're not following anyone that is what I would consider a civilized human being, because all civilized human beings know it's wrong to kill. And so you stop killing Homo sapiens. And for now, I'm sure that I've gone my 20 minutes. If you believe anything that I said, as I've said before, I hope you'll tell other people. You'll ask people to subscribe to my channel. I will continue talking generally about the Bible. And as I said, I am a Christian, and I have made it clear that my ideas and theory on religion may not coincide with every other Christian's theory, but I will try to be clear and share mine when necessary. I want women to be equal, not only in my relationship, but in the relationship of everyone in the society. Now, do I know how to do that? No, because I don't know how women think. That's why I want to get to know a lot of them, because I've got to learn how to act, I've got to learn how to think, and I've got to learn from the women how to be the kind of person that the Philistines were 3,550 years ago. And with that, I'm going to say goodbye. This is the end of Fruit of Passion number 7.